Chapter 112. No matter what happens, no matter what you do, I'll always have your back. Yes, I'll always be there for you. Jenny enjoyed the scents as she sped along the forest roads. The first ride of the season was always amazing. Every winter she seemed to forget the feeling of freedom, the smells, the joy of riding a motorcycle. The first ride was always such a wonderful reminder. It was the beginning of April, so it was still quite cold, but she didn't mind. She knew the roads well. She and Diego had often taken these roads when he had taught her to drive with flow. She sang inside the helmet, enjoying the ride, enjoying spring. Further ahead she saw a group of motorcyclists. She also saw a police car, no, 2 or even 3, with blue rotating lights. What had happened here? Some of the motorcycle guys had snakes symbols on their backs. Great, about time. She was happy the police were finally able to do something about these idiots. As she got closer, she saw there was not only guys from Snakes, there were all other motorcyclists as well. Among them, Diego's friend Angus. Her satisfaction turned to worry. If Angus was here, if Angus had been caught, what about Diego? She drove slowly towards the motley crowd. It looked as if the police had just gained control of the situation. Some people sat on their motorcycles, others were handcuffed and being put in police cars. Some of the policemen were talking heatedly on walkie-talkies. There was still tension in the air. Whatever had happened was not over yet. She drove closer and looked at the faces. Where was Diego? She drove past the group slowly, hesitantly. Would the police stop her too? They didn't. On the contrary, they waited for her to pass. They wanted her to disappear from there as soon as possible. A few hundred meters later, she saw him. He came running out of the woods up onto the road. Behind him, 2 policemen ran while shouting to Diego and in the walkie-talkies. Diego ran in his motorcycle boots and his black leather suit. That made him slow, and the police were catching up. Without a moment of hesitation, she drove past them all and stopped just in front of Diego. His eyes, the steel grey eyes that had been calm in all kinds of life-threatening situations, were terrified. It felt as if it took him an eternity, but it could not have been more than a few seconds before his eyes changed. He recognized her, got up on a motorcycle. She turned the gas handle quickly, but in a controlled way. This was a gravel road after all, and drove off fast. The police shouted even louder, but she knew this was not an American film. This was Sweden. The police wouldn't shoot at them. Diego sat strangely. He just held on with one hand and he leaned to the side. Was he hurt? After glancing in the rearview mirror, she understood why he was hanging like that. He was covering her license plate with his hand and arm. She could not help but smile. In the midst of this dangerous situation, he was still experienced enough to do such a thing, to protect her from the consequences. She continued to drive fast, long after the police were out of sight. Only now did she get scared. Only now did she feel the adrenaline and a metallic taste in her mouth. She had picked up Diego right in front of the eyes of the police. She had driven away from them. This time there was no doubt she had definitely performed a criminal act. She didn't care. She would do it again. She would do anything to help her hero. He tapped her arm and pointed to the right. She took the exit road he was pointing at, and after a few hundred meters she saw some motorcyclists standing there together. Even from a distance she saw their worry and anxiety. When she arrived and they saw that Diego was sitting behind her, the mood eased. They smiled and did high fives. She stopped and Diego got off. The others stepped forward and pounded him in the back. They didn't have time to rejoice for long. It was time to leave. They gave him a motorcycle. His own was probably left somewhere where she had picked him up. He had lost a motorcycle, but that price was small compared to what it could have been, compared to the price Angus would pay. Before getting on the motorcycle, Diego stopped and turned around. He put his fingers to the temple and thanked her with a salute. Jenny did the same to thank him for all the times he had been there for her, had risked everything for her. They stayed like that for a few seconds. That was all they had. That was all they needed. As Diego and the others left, she paused for a moment in the silence that followed. Emotion stormed inside her. Adrenaline, fear, joy, gratitude. He hadn't passed by, smiled, and told her that everything was fine, but he had looked at her with a look that had said so much. They had given each other a greeting filled with respect, thanked each other, and showed that, whenever needed, they would be there for each other, no